Your time and expertise are valuable, making focus one of the most important resources to have at work. These days, professionals spend nearly half the work week on written communication, and it can be difficult to stay on task with all the emails and documents you have to get through. With Grammarly as your AI writing partner, you can stay focused and quickly get through your work with relevant real-time suggestions wherever you write. It works across 500,000 apps and websites, so it can help with everything, from brainstorming presentation ideas to sounding more confident and persuasive in emails and reports. For 15 years, Grammarly has offered best-in-class communication support and enterprise-grade security on a business model that doesn't sell your data. 93% of professionals report that Grammarly helps them get more work done. Download Grammarly for free at grammarly.com/podcast. That's GRAMMARLY.com/podcast.
Hi, I'm Marquette Shepard, host of More to the Story, and on this episode, I'm sharing my interview with TV writer Sandra Fiocasca, who went from executive producing big shows like The Hardy Boys and Alaska Daily starring Hilary Swank to writing her debut novel. It's called The Ends of Things, and it's a thought-provoking suspense thriller with something rare at the forefront: two female lead characters. Sex and the City writer and co-author of He's Just Not That Into You, Liz Tuccillo, said in a quote, "The Ends of Things captivates you immediately with its dark mystery, nail-biting suspense, and dreamy seaside resort setting. But what it leaves you with is a profound understanding of the power and passion of female friendships." And with that intriguing review, I just had to know more. So I sat down with Sandra to talk about her book, and we discussed everything from how a brief encounter with jealousy led to the idea for this book that literally kept her up at night, to the story behind how she used the number 13 to get her book published, and who she's manifesting to play the lead roles of her novel if and when it's turned into a movie. Here's the full conversation with Sandra, debut novelist of The Ends of Things. Take a listen and we'll chat more on the other side.
89% of business leaders say AI is a top priority. But with AI tools popping up everywhere, how do you separate the helpful from the hype? The right choice is crucial, which is why teams at 1/3 of Fortune 500 companies use Grammarly. With over 15 years of experience building responsible, secure AI, Grammarly isn't just another AI communication assistant. It's how companies like yours increase productivity while keeping data protected and private. Designed to fit the needs of business, Grammarly is backed by a user-first privacy policy and industry-leading security credentials. This means you won't have to worry about the safety of your company information. Grammarly also emphasizes responsible AI, so your company can avoid harmful bias. See why 70,000 teams and 30 million people trust Grammarly at grammarly.com/enterprise. That's grammarly.com/enterprise. Grammarly, enterprise-ready AI.
I am excited for you in this book on so many levels because it's not every day that you meet someone, or for the listeners, you get to hear about someone who's a TV writer. And you went from writing scripts for a living to writing books. I believe that writers write, but I know that there is a transition or a shift that happens. So for you, you've achieved a wonderful amount of success in television. What made you decide to want to write a book?
Well, I had always wanted to write a novel since childhood. It was always at the back of my mind. But with this story specifically, when I conceived of the idea, I actually initially thought I would write it as a screenplay. But when I wrote the outline and I read it back, I realized all my favorite parts were descriptions, musings, observations, none of which would translate to the screen. And when I realized my heroine is a catastrophizer, who imagines these worst case scenarios, I realized I needed access to her private thoughts. And so that's when I realized, I think this needs to be a novel. And so then I set out on this sort of brand new journey without, really experience to capture the story that I wanted to tell.
Ooh, so that's interesting. I'm actually a worrier too. I bet many people are. Tell us a little bit more about your heroine. I know she's on this journey in a new place.
Exactly. So my heroine, Laura, is a catastrophizer, which means she always imagines the worst case scenario, or she's a worrier, like you mentioned. And I didn't realize until I finished the manuscript and read it back that I'm a catastrophizer too. That was sort of a surprise to me. And that's actually where the title of the book comes from, The Ends of Things, because Laura often imagines the ends of things. And for her, she's fearful of a lot of scenarios. And I wrote this book to explore the fears that I have myself about being a woman in the world, around traveling alone or being independent in the world. I think a lot of women have these fears as well. I think we're conditioned in many ways by society to have these reservations. So I wanted to explore them, confront them, and see why they persist.
And can you set it up for people who don't know too much about Laura? She's on an island in a faraway place. I don't want to give too much away.
Absolutely. So Laura is a lawyer in New York, and she's always wanted to travel to a Caribbean island, to a beautiful resort, but she was perpetually single and didn't really have the courage to go alone. So when she finds herself in a new relationship with her boyfriend, Dave, they set out on this short beach getaway to this island in the Bahamas at this beautiful couples resort. But when they arrive, among all of the couples on the beach, Laura notices a woman vacationing alone. And at first, this is surprising and intriguing. Why would this woman come to a couples resort by herself? And then she feels a bit jealous. Why don't I have the courage to come to this place by myself? And then she gets a bit angry, and so she has a lot of emotions around this. And then she befriends this woman who we learn is named Diana, and then Diana disappears. And so Laura becomes embroiled in the police investigation that unfolds after Diana goes missing.
This is so interesting as a setup because as women, we do, especially with social media, we look at someone else's life who we don't even know. And well, why does she have that and I don't? And once you get involved or you peel back the layers of the onion, you always find out that things aren't as they appear.
It's so true. And that's something my novel explores as well, is this degree of performance and curation. The way we perform on social media, Instagram doesn't reflect reality. We're often looking at our peers, we're comparing our lives. Laura does this a lot. I think also when we go on vacation, we observe other couples or other people at these resorts. You're spending a short amount of time with strangers, observing their every move, and we often tell ourselves stories about their lives. And so this explores that idea as well.
For your women readers, what do you want them to gain out of this experience?
To me, this novel is a really fun, escapist psychological thriller, but it has an unconventional ending. And it also explores female friendship and agency. And so to me, this is a really fun book to take on vacation, for example. I know picking a book on vacation is really hard because I want two things. I want a fun escapist read, but oftentimes thrillers are built around twists. And often I'm left feeling a bit empty when I get to the last page. Whereas I also love literary fiction with beautiful descriptions and insight, but those aren't always page turners. And so I wanted a book that combined both. That is this really fun, entertaining read that makes me turn the pages, but that explores deeper themes that I'm still thinking about, on the plane ride home.
I feel like when you leave your audience or your readers thinking about what's next, what's going to happen, or sometimes, like, if I'm sad when the story is over, I said the writer has done her job or he's done his job. And haven't you found on screen and in books, this thriller that you're describing, there's a male lead more often than not. And what your book does is it gives women a front seat to that story that I don't think we have when you look at some of the other great male novelists.
That's a really great point, and thank you for mentioning that. That's something that I find as well. I Maybe it's because I'm a woman, I relate more to female leads, but more specifically, I really wanted to write a lead that was very relatable. I wanted to write a thriller that was grounded, where things like this could actually happen. Because oftentimes in these mysteries, there's a degree of suspension of disbelief. You have to buy in to something that is a bit of a stretch. And I really wanted to go down a path where, no, this could really happen to you on vacation. And so I wanted to write a character that was very relatable and very grounded and realistic.
Even though you came up with this story and you said this is a novel, can you see this being turned into a TV series or film?
I definitely hope so. I'm currently writing a pitch for how it could be adapted into a television series. And that's part of my background. I'm a television writer by profession, as you mentioned. And in addition to staffing in writers' rooms for shows, I also spend a lot of time developing or adapting books to series. And I often work in the thriller space. So my reps send me thriller novels for consideration. And most recently, I worked on two treatments for adaptation. So one is Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica, and the other is Too Good to Be True by Carola Lovering. And so those are wonderful thriller novels that I worked on the treatment to adapt. And so after adapting those, I was really keen to try my hand at writing my own.
It's like, okay, you've done this for other people. Now you're doing it for yourself. There's got to be something that feels so special about this.
It's incredibly special and a total childhood dream come true and a long time coming. I mean, it was like a 6.5 year journey from conception to publication. So it's really, really exciting to see it come to fruition and be hitting bookstores, January 14th. It's really a thrill.
You have a lot of exciting things going on with your life.
That's
You
right.
have this debut novel, which is fabulous. I'm taking it on the plane with me for my next vacation. I started it, but as a busy mom who works, I haven't finished it. But you're also a new mother, and this is all coming very closely together.
That's true. Yes. I didn't time it that way, but that's how life sometimes happens that way. And it's funny, people say, "So how do you organize your writing schedule?" And I have two answers, like before the baby, oh, I would work on my morning pages and I would carve out 3 to 4 hours in the morning to write. And now it's like when the baby naps is when I do my writing. As I'm sure you can relate to finding those stolen moments to get your work done.
Absolutely. I wrote my first manuscript for a children's book when my son, who's now 11, was a newborn. And everybody said, nap when the baby naps, because that's how you're going to get sleep. And I was like, if I can write a script where I was working in local news, but I said, if I can write a script for a newscast, I can write a baby book. And I basically didn't sleep. But
That's
the
amazing.
number,
The same with me. They say, yeah, sleep when the baby sleeps, and I guess I edit manuscripts when the baby edits manuscripts. I mean, it's the only time to do it to get any work done. So
the number one question that I get asked is, how did you get your book published? And I know that it's a very nuanced answer. And I work in the children's space, right? But there are so many people who have these amazing stories. They either experience something that's too strange to be fiction and it's true, or they want to share their idea for a thriller or true crime novel. What is your answer to people who they want to do what you've done and write their first book?
well, there's the conceiving of the idea, and then there's actually the process. And so for me, the idea came to me on vacation because I experienced something very similar to my heroine. I had wanted to travel to a beach resort, but I was a workaholic. I was perpetually single. And when I finally found myself in a relationship, we went to a couples resort in the Bahamas. And that's where I noticed among the couples, this woman alone. And I was so intrigued by her. And I found myself being a bit jealous of her and a little bit indignant and angry. And I was experiencing so many complex emotions that when I came home from the vacation, I was still thinking about this stranger. I knew I had to write about it. So I would say, if you have an idea that stays with you and won't leave you alone and keeps you up at night, you got to explore that. And then there was the question of how to write this thing, which is so long. And I'd read this interview with the author, Jeff Vandermeer, and he was asked, how do you know if your idea is a story or a novel? And he said, if you can write 30,000 words on the topic and have more to say, it's probably a novel. So I challenged myself over a few weeks or a month or so to write every day. And if I would hit that 30,000 word limit and still have more I wanted to say, then it's probably a novel. And so that was the beginning. It was just this long Word document. But then there became the question of, well, how do I structure this? I had no experience. The only experience I had was television writing. And in television writing, you break story on index cards that you mount on corkboards. And, typical television season is 13 episodes. My book is 13 chapters. I basically broke the book the way I would approach breaking story of a season of television, because that was the only way I knew how. And so I literally had corkboards with, every chapter was broken down into scenes and every column was a chapter. So 13 episodes, 13 chapters. And so after a period of a year and a half, I had the completed manuscript. And that's when I started querying for an agent. And when I signed with my agent, she put the book on submission. It was on submission for almost a year. And all this time I'm working on television shows, right? I'm just, waiting to hear. And at the end of 2022, I just finished season 1 of Alaska Daily. I came home, and right before the Christmas holidays, my agent said, we're getting an offer, from Blackstone. And it was like the best gift to go into the holiday season with. And so in 2023, I was paired with my incredible editor, and we spent the summer editing the book. And then it was sort of put into the publishing pipeline where, you work with publicists and copy editors and that title covered art design. And so here we are, and it's coming out mid-January.
And that is why it's a 6-year journey, folks.
It's so long. I thought television was long, but the book world demands a lot of patience, and for good reason. I mean, the more distance you have on your book, the more you can separate it from yourself, the better of an editor you can become. So as impatient as I was, I'm glad for the distance, because you can see it for what it is. You kind of can step outside of it, which is such an important, crucial aspect of the editing process.
And are you the type of writer who you write something, you talked about the 30,000 words, you set it down, and then you come back and you try to perfect it and try to get it just right? Or do you write it and then get an opinion, editor or significant other or otherwise first? What is your process for saying this is done? Or is it ever really feeling like it's done?
I don't think you can ever really be done, but and there's certain stages for me. The first stage is just finish it. The hardest thing is finishing it, because self-doubt is such a big obstacle. But my experience in television writing is writing quickly, writing as well as you can, as quickly as you can. So that was a muscle that I've been training for 15 years. And so that was the first step. It's just get it out, get it on paper, and ignore your inner critic, and then come back to it and start refining it. And when I think when it's the best that I can make it, when I don't know how to improve it, that's when it's time to share with a trusted reader. Of course, it can always be improved. And then in the final moments of refining with a copy editor, I basically read until I don't pause. Like if you're reading it and you stumble on something or something bothers you, that still needs tinkering. But if you can kind of get through a page and not pause or bump, then that's when I'm happy enough to let it go.
I'm hearing that. One, you took a situation where you looked at someone's life on the surface, kind of frustrated you a little bit, but you channeled that into creativity. So instead of being mad at this random woman for living a life that sounds like you weren't courageous enough to go and do, instead you made a novel about it. You made something interesting and cool that people can relate to. And then you worked really hard, and then you were patient and got other people's opinions. Good for anyone listening who needs that inspiration. Did I get everything right? Would you like
I
to
think,
add or edit me?
no, you nailed it. I think that's what it is. I think the reason I read this somewhere, and it's so true, the reason you write a novel or the reason you commence any creative work, I think is because you're trying to understand something about yourself that you can't articulate yet. And I had to write my novel to figure out what I was trying to say. And so I feel like that first draft, I think it was Neil Gaiman who said this. The first draft is figuring out what you want to say. The second draft is about going back and making it look like you're doing it on purpose. And so that first draft is crucial for just unpacking what are these emotions? Why, what am I feeling? And then going back and saying, oh, this is what I'm trying to say. How can I say it better? So I think multiple drafts are so key. And it's all about, I think creativity is all about understanding yourself better. And where, so for me, it was what are these emotions and why do I feel so strongly about a stranger? I needed to explore that for sure.
I hear that from so many women. I think it's more, we don't talk about this a lot, but I don't know whether it was a year and a half, 2 years of people being in the pandemic and at home and scrolling their Instagram. But I'm hearing a lot lately that people get frustrated when they see another woman walk into a room and something that they want to do looks so easy for the other person, or they're doing it. And it's like, why didn't I try that? And I think it's important to talk about these things because once you figure that out, it's just like, what do you do with these emotions? And what you did was write the book. And then at what point do you say, I got my emotions out. Now I'm ready to entertain?
That's it. That's it. And for me, that's my favorite way to sort of take in art is, and that's what I want readers to take away from this book is this is a really fun escapist read. Yes, it explores these deeper themes, but at the end of the day, it's a very propulsive page turner. It's just a really fun book to curl up with in the middle of the winter when you want to feel like you're in somewhere warm or if you're taking on vacation. While it explores these deeper themes and issues, at the end of the day, it's a fun beachy thriller.
I love it. So I like to say to all of my listeners, don't just go through life, glow through life. Sandra, it sounds like you're doing that on so many levels. Congratulations on all of your success, books, TV, babies plural, maybe. I don't know.
Right now, baby and maybe a book baby. They're sisters.
Okay, that's much easier to take care of. What's next for you? And can you tell us any exciting actresses you might be dreaming up to play Laura in your book to film deal? I'm going to manifest it already.
Oh, I love that idea of manifesting. That's so important to manifest, right? I definitely had a vision board when I was working on this book that I kept on my desk. Actresses, there's so many great actresses who could play these parts. Someone who I think would make a great Laura, someone who channels her anxiety really well is Anna Kendrick would be awesome. Someone who'd make a great Diana, very elusive, mysterious, like a Florence Pugh. I think I've always loved. In terms of what I'm working on next, I am working on a domestic thriller that is told from multiple perspectives, and it's set in this upscale neighborhood here in Los Angeles. So I'm in the early days of that.
Wow, that sounds so exciting. I can't thank you enough for shining your light with me and really giving some helpful tips because now you'll soon find out. Now that your debut novel is out, everyone's going to ask you, how'd you get your book published? And you can just say, I did a podcast where I spoke about this very thing. Go listen to it.
Will do.
Where can we follow you on social media to keep up with all of the great things you are working on?
Sure. On Instagram, I'm at Sandra CHW, and same handle on Twitter.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Great to meet you.
All right, I hope you enjoyed listening to my conversation with Sandra Fiakoska, author of the novel The Ends of Things. I have a link to where you can purchase the book in the show notes of this episode and on my website, glowstreamtv.com. So make sure you check it out. And now it's time to hear from listeners who serve as guest TV and film reviewers in a segment of the podcast called What I'm Watching Right Now. This first TV recommendation comes from Philadelphia native Cheryl Grant, who recommends a dark comedy with a romantic twist. Intrigued? Here's more.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Grant, and I'm from Philly, the city of brotherly love, and currently living in the nation's capital. What I'm watching right now is Peacock's new original series called Laid. Laid stars Stephanie Shu in the lead role. You may know her from the award winning hit movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. I have to say, Laid is everything I never knew I needed in a romantic comedy. This show isn't your typical lovey dovey rom com. So here's the deal. Simply put, Stephanie Shu plays Ruby, a single woman in her 30s whose exes mysteriously start dying in bizarre ways. And what's even more strange, they are dying in the order she slept with them. Now, I'm a huge fan of romantic comedies and the happily ever after storylines, but this quirky twist on this show really grabbed my attention. Laid is, of course, a bit dark in its narrative, but it's also funny and smartly written. It's got unexpected heart and gives sort of that show's Sex in a City vibe, especially when Ruby starts to analyze her romantic past when trying to solve the mystery of what's happening. I think this series is relatable, and Stephanie Shu is really outstanding as the lead character. So I recommend watching this series. Plus, Laid is only 8 episodes, so that makes it perfect for binge watching. Check it out. Laid is streaming right now on Peacock.
Thanks, Cheryl, for that recommendation. Now, Cheryl's voice may sound familiar because she has appeared on the Tom Joyner Morning Show as an on air contributor in the past. She also writes entertainment features as a film critic for glowstreamtv.com. Now, as you may know, Glowstream TV, in full transparency, produces this podcast. You can follow Cheryl on Instagram at News to Share. That's news, the number 2, share. This next listener review comes from Nick in Boca Raton, Florida, who has a music documentary from a familiar voice. Here's a listen.
My name is Nick Stefanovich, and I'm from South Florida. And what I'm currently watching right now is A Complete Unknown. Well, actually, I watched it yesterday in theaters. Now, this isn't just an important musical biopic. This is an important piece of history. Lovely performances, very well paced and well set up, and it definitely only covered the important and pivotal parts of the great Bob Dylan's life.
Many thanks, Nick, for that great recommendation. Now, listeners, Nick is an actor and music artist who does improv theater. But as you can tell from his review, music is at his heart. You can check out Nick's band, People's Love Cult, by following him on Instagram at Mr. Pope Official. Thanks for sending in the reviews. I'm hearing from so many of you. I can't play them all in one episode, but I promise to play the best of the best on future episodes. So if you have something that you're currently watching on TV or you went to the movies and you saw a really great film, DM me via Instagram at Marquette Shepherd and tell me about it. I would love to hear about what you're watching, and you can save me and the listeners a bunch of time by letting us know what's good on TV and in the movie theaters. So once again, you can DM me at Marquette Shepherd, and I look forward to hearing and sharing about your TV and film picks in a future episode. Until then, thanks for listening, and make sure you follow, rate, and review the podcast to show your support. And in return, I will keep showing up to chat with you and giving you the best in entertainment news, interviews, and reviews. Take care.